So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our third session of the day, which is the review of the Civil Aviation Operations of Aircraft General Aviation Regulations 2021. As had been mentioned earlier, Captain Merikai will be taking us through the regulations. These regulations are regulations that apply to operators who are undertaking operations other than for commercial purposes. They're the ones who are covered by the Civil Aviation Operation of Aircraft. The Civil Aviation Operation of Aircraft General Aviation Regulations 2021. As it had been mentioned during the earlier period that we just concluded, that the instrument and equipment regulations, the General Aviation Regulations had a provision on instrument and equipment within them, but that has been deleted from the 2021 draft regulations, and it has been taken or provided for under the Civil Aviation Instrument and Equipment Regulations. So just before we went on break, we had a participant who wanted to make a comment. Probably I'll invite them to come on board just before we proceed with the particular presentation that we have on right now, which is a General Aviation Regulations. Bwana Ali Omar, we went offline just before you had gotten an opportunity to make to give us your comments when we were doing the instrument and equipment regulations. Bwana Omar, please have the floor.
Thank you again, Dennis. I wanted to make a comment on the Adsb out response from the inspector. I just wanted to find out is what exactly is the requirement of ICAO? Does ICAO say that everyone has to have Adsb out, or is specifically we have a leeway to have operators who are not flying outside the country to be Adsb compliant? You know, we want to know the exact details, because some of these aircrafts you operate did not come out of factory with the Adsb installation, so we'll have to modify these aircrafts, and the modification for Adsb is quite expensive. It's very, very expensive, and it will need us to have a lot of time to raise capital to comply with these requirements. If you can allow the law to accommodate operators who will restrict certain aircrafts to operate domestically, that will go a long way until a time when the operators are ready to comply. Then they will be allowed to take off these aircrafts in the international airspace. But for now, I don't think our airspace is that crowded for us to warrant, compliance with these very stringent requirements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Bwana Omar, for the question on the Adsb output. I believe we will be hearing from one of our colleagues, that's Mary Keter, when it comes to the issue on the applicability. But as had been mentioned earlier on, we will have transition clauses that will enable us determine the time that is required to enable the industry be compliant. So I'm requesting my colleague, Ms. Mary Keter, to come on board and give you an appropriate answer for that. Ms. Keter, you can link to join and take the floor. So, thank you very much, Bwana Omar. Your question has been noted and will be responded to accordingly in just a few minutes before we start our next session, which is the operation of aircraft, general aviation. Yes, we can hear you. Kindly proceed. You have the floor. I think as we are doing the presentations as we are receiving the feedback on the answer, probably the audio was not very clear. We are providing the same is being looked into, and we'll be able to provide feedback in a short while with regard to the timelines on ADSB out as requested. So Ms. Mary Keter, you can come online and provide the feedback. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? Okay, thank you, Dennis. And again, there is a question from Ali Omar on regarding ADSB implementation. This requirement from ICAO is expected that by 2023, implementation will have actually been complied with by all states. And currently, the authority through this amendment of these regulations, we require that this should first have put in place, the authority should have first put in place an enabling regulations, which we have done. And now the next thing that the authority is gonna do is to come up with the technical guidance materials to guide both the industry and the authority on implementation processes and the kind of certification process that members in the industry will be expected to actually ensure compliance with these requirements. Thank you, Ali. Have I answered your question clearly? Ali Omar.
Thank you, Mary, for the feedback. As has been clearly stated, the time period for applicability as required by ICAO is the year 2023. So I'll take this opportunity to welcome the next presenter. That's Captain Mary Kai, to take us through the general aviation, the draft civil aviation operation of aircraft, general aviation regulations 2021. We'll also have the presentation on the AOC and admin presented for purposes of repeat and to enable those who missed the session tomorrow morning also get an opportunity to give their input and remarks on the same.
Thank you, Dennis, for this opportunity. Can everybody hear me? Okay, my name is Captain Barry Kai, and I will take you all through the general aviation. Okay, as you can see the matrix on our screens, the first 20 pages of the general aviation is mostly talking about the definitions. Some have been deleted and others have been amended. as per Annex 6. So to save on time, I'll just quickly scroll through it. And if you have any questions, you can be able to take it at the end of the presentation. So as mentioned earlier, most of them have been deleted and others have been amended to comply with Annex 6, Part 2. Okay, now when we go through Section 3, which is applicability, most of it, as mentioned before, we've just reworded to transpose to the requirements of Annex 6, Part 2. So for the one for dangerous goods, which is Regulation 5, we have amended the text to align to authorities' practice. So we've just added the word approval. And the next section we've deleted in accordance, and it's been amended to read approved and published by the authority in compliance with the decisions of the Council of the International Civil Aviation Organization for the time being in force. So on this page, we look at, because of the changes for them being amended, some of the sub-regulations have been renumbered. So that's where the difference is. For Regulation 10, flight preparation, we corrected the sub-regulation because of the changes and the amendments done, some being deleted, others being amended. For Regulation 10, it's a new sub-regulation. So when you look at the remarks, we have inserted as Regulation 10, sub-regulation 9, to transpose to the requirements of Annex 6, Part 2, 2.2.3.5. The current regulation is 10 or 9 to 13, renumbered due to addition of new text. So if we look at the Regulation 11 in-flight procedures, we've just changed the part for when weather conditions to when meteorological conditions. That it also has been amended to transpose to the requirement of Annex 6, Part 2, and the reference is as seen. So 16.2, we have just renumbered due to the changes. 26 is a new sub-regulation to effectively transpose to the requirements of Annex 6, Part 2, and we have the reference, which is there. So 26, Regulation 26.6, there was incorrect drafting, so we have redrafted it to transpose the requirement that is Annex 6, Part 2. And so is Regulation 27. We had incorrect drafting, so we have amended accordingly. For Regulation 31, the flight data recorders and aircraft data recording system, we will review and amend accordingly. Once we have done that, we'll be able to communicate with the industry during that time. For the next part, for Regulation 32, as you can see, the title has changed to Instruments and Equipment. As our legal department, represented by Dennis, everything has been moved to Instruments and Equipments for ease of you as operators being able to get everything in one regulation. So we are going to remove Regulation 32, and it will be found under Instruments and Equipment. And so that one is for 33 and 34. Also, it has been addressed in Civil Aviation Instruments and Equipment Regulation. So 36, as we had mentioned earlier, we have amended most of it to give correct sub-regulation reference as per Annex 6. So Regulation 36.7, as you can see, the gap was we did not comply with the requirements of the standard. So we have just transposed the requirement of Annex 6, Part 2, that's 2.5.1.8. And Regulation 36, which was also under 8, we have just added to transpose the requirement of the annex. 35 was a differ in character, which has been noted. So for 39, under aeroplane maintenance, it's now continuous under airworthiness, and the change of title took effect in last year, 5th November 2020, as you can see in the remarks. So for Regulation 38, which was owner's maintenance responsibility, as mentioned earlier, it's moved to owner's continuing airworthiness responsibility, and the regulation had been deleted. It was applicable until November 2020, which was last year, as per Annex 6, Part 2. The rest we have changed just to transpose so that it reads according to Annex 6, Part 2, which instead of certificate release, it has changed to maintenance release. So for Regulation 52, what we had before did not comply to the standard. So we've just added to transpose to the requirements of Annex 6, Part 2. For Regulation 60, which is now Regulation 58, we had to reword to give regulation reference as per Annex 6, Part 2, which is 3.5.2.6. As you can see, as earlier mentioned before, we were just looking to renumbering has been changed, and amendment is due to Annex 6, Part 2. And what is not applicable, we have deleted. Brings me to the end of our presentation for the matrix for the Okay, apologies. We are having internet connectivity issues. But as I mentioned earlier, that brings the end to my presentation. Unless you have anyone who has a question in regard to the draft for operation of aircraft, General Aviation Regulations 2021. Okay, I'll hand over the floor back to Dennis. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Captain, for taking us through the civil aviation operation of aircraft, general aviation. We will be requesting for input from the participants in terms of any questions and clarifications that may be there. As had been mentioned during the presentation, most of the changes were on the renumbering of the regulations due to the deletion of provisions that are no longer under the general operations regulations, but have been taken to the instrument and equipment regulations. So we will be inviting any input or comments on the same just before we give an opportunity to the EOC and admin regulations. We'll go through the same, highlighting provisions of the regulations where the changes have taken place. Then thereafter, we will receive input from the industry as well as comments from the industry on the AOC and admin, and both the AOC and admin as well as the operation of aircraft general aviation. We had an input from Bwana Ali Omar. Please come online so that you can have the stage. Let us have your comments before we let the next presenter take us through the EOC and admin that most of the people had missed out due to the connection, the shifting from one session to the other yesterday morning. Yes. So Bonali Omar, you have the floor.
Thank you, Dennis. I have a few questions for Madam Mary on the Adsb out issue. When you look at these regulations, they just talk about the recording content. That is the only place I've seen. Maybe a bit of, maybe she can educate me. I understand it's an ICAO requirement, but is it possible for, because the operators are going to incur a very huge cost, is it possible for the authority to file a difference and acquire limitations on how they are going to regulate us in terms of maybe the altitude or restriction in terms of operating outside the country? It's such an expensive thing. You know, on my other question, as the authority develops the requirements for the Adsb, will we be back here to discuss those particular ones as they come up with something before they become law? Those are the items I want to raise on the ADSB out issue. So if there is a way we can be accommodated as operators, then instead of upgrading my whole, 10 aircraft, I can upgrade maybe 2, which will be limited to flying internationally, and the other ones can continue operating domestically. Because is there a need for us to just change the regulation to accommodate ICAO, or is there issues that are safety related to our Kenyan airspace that warrant us to just oblige to these requirements blindly? What informs us to just accept the compliance other than ICAO requirement? Because if you read the history and the origin of ADSB, it's supposed to improve, improve something. But is there a problem in our airspace right now that we really require ADSB? We have right now, we've installed SAT tracking systems that are very accurate and they meet the requirements. They are meeting the requirements of the law right now. We can track our aircraft. The aircraft can be seen. Unless maybe we are evading, certain things in our airspace, safety related issues. Thank you. Hello, Dennis.
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear. We are giving response to question as has been put to this. And as a CAA, we are here to ensure that we are as facilitative as possible when it comes to the operations. If if the industry will require a particular time period to enable compliance, then that is what the authority will listen to and will be able to have that particular requirement drafted in a way that enables the industry comply. My colleague, Ms. Mary Keter, will shed more light on this when she comes on board. But your question is very well received, and we at KCA will try our level best for purposes of facilitating the industry. So as my colleague, Ms. Mary Keter, comes on board to give a response to that, we will be moving to the AOC and admin regulations that will enable us, will enable all those who missed yesterday's session participate or give their comments and input. So without further ado, let me request Ms. Mary Keter if she is ready to come online and give feedback on the particular recommendation that has been given by Bwana Omar. Ms. Keter, if you're ready, you can come on and have the floor for purposes of giving feedback on the question that has been, the proposal that has been given by Bwana Omar to enable the industry meet the requirements as have been required by ICAO on the ADSB. So okay, as we are getting the comments from Ms. Keter, I can see there's a comment by Wanagad Kamau. If an AOC holder operates an uncommercial flight, does the flight fall under general aviation regulation, test flights, ferry position, etc.? The general aviation regs are less onerous. Okay, this is a good question. Probably we'll have one of my colleagues address the same, but for purposes of general aviation, and as had been mentioned, these are flights that are conducted for any other purpose other than commercial operations, as in they are undertaken not for hire or reward. They fall under the category of general aviation. So probably before, as Ms. Kateri is preparing to come and respond to the proposal that has been given, I'll request my colleague, Ms. Elizabeth Kamene, to come on the stage and take us through the. Oh, I can see my colleague Mary Kateri is here.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. I hope you can hear me now clearly. Sorry, because of issues of internet connection here. But from Ali Omar, you had about 3 concerns that you have put forth. One of them is regarding the ADSB compliance timeframes. That must we as Kenyans comply with this? Or can we file differences with ICAO? Ali, I think what we are doing is first we have the standards given by ICAO in its annexes, and we have recommendations. So what Kenya has done in this regulation is to adopt the standards as they are. We have not filed any differences. This is in Annex 6, where we are looking at operations of ADSB, and then the specifications for the specific equipment that will be required, like Mode S equipment, are found in Annex 10, Volume 4, which again are standards which Kenya has complied with them as is in the regulations. You mentioned that you have only seen one part of the regulation that talks about recording of information on this ADSB. Yes, we noted the same. This is a good input for this forum. And we have actually noted that, so that with the team that is charged with this part of amending the instruments and equipment regulations, we are actually looking at amending that part, which calls for recording, and this is in the first schedule of the instruments and equipment. We will incorporate your input on that. And then with regard to operations, then it means that what is given as standards is what KCA has adopted. And this is what KCA is going to guide the industry properly through technical guidance materials. It will be specific who is supposed to ensure compliance with this, because not everybody in the industry is required to comply with ADSB. Again, it doesn't only require the aircraft operator, it is also requiring the states to also have equipment to support this ADSB implementation. So this is teamwork for both the operator and the CAA, and we will be specific as time goes by to guide you correctly on who and who is not going to operate in this particular kind of requirement of ADSB. Thank you, Ali. If that is okay with you, Ali, I want to pass the floor to Dennis. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Apologies for that small disconnection. The internet had dropped, but now we are back. So now we'll be getting the presentation on the the draft civil aviation air operator certification and administration regulations. This was a request that was made pursuant to the challenge that we had yesterday of shifting from one session to the other, that I can see most of us today have been able to adequately follow the processes. This is evidenced by the number of participants that we have today. So my colleague, Ms. Elizabeth Kamene, will be taking us through um, the draft civil aviation air operator certification and administration regulations. Thereafter, we will have an opportunity to give any input or feedback from the industry on the regulations that have been presented, as well as any regulation that may have been presented to now. During which time, if the panelists are available, they'll give the remarks, and if they are not available online at the moment, we will be able to have the same questions recorded and input given as appropriate for purposes of response from the CAA. So at the moment, I want to invite my colleague Elizabeth Kamene to take us through the EOC and admin regulations. Ms. Kamene, kindly have the floor. Noting the time constraints, we will try as much as possible to be brief on the regulations so that we can get as much input from the industry as possible. Please, in case you need to come on board, let us know through the questions button and you will be given the floor. So right now, Ms. Elizabeth Kamene, kindly proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this session of AOC and admin regulations. It's a repeat from yesterday. We had the same session at around 10:30, but due to demand, we are going to redo it. So I'll take you through the matrix for AOC and admin as shared to the industry. I'll just go through the items that were of concern from the industry, and then we will receive your questions. Okay. So on the changes that were made from the previous regulations, I will not address the interpretation because we only changed that one for dangerous goods. To note is regulation number 8, where we amended the AOC duration from 12 months to 24 months. We received a comment where the draft regulations were still reading 12 months. That one will be corrected. On regulation number 8, we were adding some a schedule just to explain what recency of operation meant, because it was not clear when you consider an AOC operator not in operation. The next one was regulation number 14, that is on qualification. We've received numerous concerns on the qualification, especially for chief pilot, the head of maintenance, and the head of safety. For the head of safety, that was addressed yesterday during the SMS regulations, and we agreed upon a time. And the title will be discussed across the board so that we have it uniformly addressed in the regulations. For the chief pilot, that one will be looked into to consider your comments. And for the head of maintenance, that one will be addressed by the airworthiness department at length. Okay, on the other regulations that were amended was regulation 23. That one was a drafting issue, so that one is okay. Okay, let me see. The regulation 35, sub-regulation 2, that was of concern from across the people who sent their comments on the change of the cabin crew number from 50 to 36. That one is being looked into, but again, we request that you also read regulation 35, sub-regulation 7, where the requirement is the number of cabin crew that you demonstrate with at phase 4 should be the number that you operate with. We are still expecting your comments on the same. Regulation 57 on safety program and management systems. We added several other sub-regulations to transpose the requirements of Annex 6, Part 1, 3.3.2. Okay, on the other one is on regulation from number 60, where there is a lot of maintenance issues. Amendments were made and some words were added to broaden the scope when we talk to preventive maintenance. And also the word certificate of release to service was amended to read maintenance release as per the new regulations. Okay, we are trying to see any other change. We reformatted schedule number 6 because it was mentioned previously, but the text was missing in 2018 regulations, so that one was added. The other addition was on approval of transport of dangerous goods regulation 78. There were a few definitions that were not addressed at the moment, and that one was addressed again. Regulation 93.4 was misplaced, and that one was deleted. There was an introduction of a new regulation on advertisement, so that you can only advertise when you have been given the certificate to operate. So I'll take you through the several comments that we got that we were to maintain from dangerous goods specialist, Mr. Kamlesh. Regulations on dangerous goods from 78. That one was considered. Regulation 81 that had the tables that are being outdated as of January 2023. It will be considered and deleted and will require operators to comply with technical instructions as of current. And the authority is in the process of coming up with the regulations to address all the requirements of Annex 18, and the industry will be involved in the same. Comments from Kenya Airline Flight Dispatchers Associations, several of them, those ones will be addressed. There was a suggestion you are requesting to have the authority define at length what is technical qualifications. It will be looked into. Regulation number 18.3, the retention period for some documents had not been addressed. See, that is retention period for other personnel. We will look into that. Regulation 52, sub-regulation 3, the one that has scheduled and unscheduled scheduled operators. You requested that we include scheduled and unscheduled to include everybody. So that one will be looked into also. There was one regulation 57.2 about the weight, 20,000 kilos. We had used the word shall, and we will amend that one to read should as per Annex 6 Part 1, 3.3.2. Yeah, this one, the one that I'm displaying, 57.2. It will read the operator of an aeroplane of a certified takeoff mass of in excess of 20,000 kilos should establish and maintain a flight data analysis program as part of its safety management systems. Mr. Kamlesh, you had requested that we check into security regarding to dangerous goods requirements as per the technical instructions. We will say that the same is included whether in these regulations or in other regulations to address the requirements of the technical instructions. For other requirements, as my colleagues have previously said, some of these requirements will be addressed in the technical guidance material that will be shared to the industry so that everything else is incorporated. So that is a summary on AOC and admin. We are going to address any other questions that will come along. Okay, so I'll just go through the questions and my colleagues will assist in responding to the same. A question from Captain Gad Kamau. The repeat is because the joining protocols had not been shared and majority of participants were left out. Okay, that one is considered. We are happy now that you are able to come along and participate. Ali Omar, you are requesting that on the chief pilot, what has KCA narrowed down towards? Captain Mary, have we concluded on that one? On the chief pilot?
Thank you, Mr. Omar, for your question about the chief pilot. And we looked at what you had sent to us, and you wanted us to consider that the chief pilot should be not from the largest fleet, but from the fleet that is the most in the company. We are looking to consider everything it is that the industry has given. But in the meantime, what we were looking at as the CAA, looking at the largest aircraft, we were reviewing the issue of experience and influence, and when we have challenges with training, which is the best way to look at it, because the chief pilot is supposed to be someone who's all-rounded and someone who has experience. But all said and done, we will look at all the remarks from the industry and will advise accordingly. Thank you.
Okay. Ali Omar again on regulation 27.4. The demonstration flights shall be one flight or as prescribed by the authority. You are suggesting that we remove the word more. I guess that one is a drafting issue. We'll look into that one and amend accordingly. On regulation 57, I have addressed that one. It will match what is in the annexes. Regulation correction on someone from flight ops, they're requesting that we consider regulation 14 qualification for personnel. For the head of operations, I think it is wise to give licensed dispatchers a chance to head this department, as they can do that as there is no requirement for dispatch license. Your comment is well received. It shall be reviewed and considered accordingly. Madam Agnes Kamau, the issue of cabin crew numbers will make Kenyan AOC have higher operation cost. Is that Kenyan cabin crew cannot meet international standards for aircraft evacuation part 1? I guess Agnes is also addressing the part where we had amended the number of cabin crew from 50 to 36. The concern had come from previous demonstration from the operators, where they were unable to demonstrate with one cabin crew as they would wish, and they would get an approval to operate with 2 cabin crew, but again go back to operating with 1, because that is what the requirement of the regulation was. So the whole idea was just to ensure that the number of cabin crew that you demonstrate with is the number that you will operate with. But the wording will be looked into by our legal team, and they will advise us on the correct version to adapt. Mr. Ephraim Murungi, is there anywhere in the draft changes it addresses the use of electronic records for aviation compliance? We are lagging behind on this, and the EFB part does not address it fully. I'll give the opportunity to my colleague to address the same. EFB. Okay, we'll address that issue and get back to you, Mr. Ephraim Murungi. You want to give Ali Omar wants to speak?
Thank you very much, Ms. Kamene, for taking us through the AOC and admin regulations. As noted, these regulations have been, we are doing them for the second time, owing to the challenge that was there yesterday morning with regard to shifting from one session to another. I'd like to invite a number of comments from the public, from the participants who have raised questions under the comment section. So let us start off by hearing from Mr. Ali Omar, who has requested the floor, and I will also be inviting the participants who have raised questions to enable them give their verbal presentation that will enable us understand where they are coming from. So Mr. Omar, you have the floor.
Hello, thank you, Dennis and Tim. I would like to point out first, I would want to request the authority to slow down on this this particular regulation, because it really touches the commercial operators, and it goes down to, it trickles down mainly to public interest in terms of the people we carry on board the aircraft. If we don't address certain items, they will directly affect operational cost, and we will not be competitive as operators, and we will not serve the public interest adequately. So to start with, I would want to comment first on the issue of regulation 27. The demonstration flight shall be one flight or more as prescribed by the authority. We've changed that to the demonstration flight shall be as specified by the authority. You see, when you change a regulation to leave it open to the authority, it is subject to interpretation. But I find that the previous regulation was okay. The demonstration flight shall be one flight, but we need to remove the word more, so that the authority doesn't go over and above the one flight. So if it is as prescribed by the authority, if the authority decides to give you 10 flights, then if you go in the tribunal will actually see that the authority is exercising too much compliance, and we are opening a can of worms if we leave the authority to decide everything. You know, it has to be a basis, it's a starting point, and all the way to a point where it makes sense. Especially as prescribed by the authority, will bring out it will bring out you know, an opportunity for operators who have been in operation, who have experience, and also for the operators who are beginning to operate. They will not be you know, they will be treated fairly. So that's my comment on that, and I would like even other operators to weigh in on this, because it's actually a very serious item if it is left to the operator to make all those decisions. Then I go to my second point, was on the chief pilot issue. The chief pilot issue, the case here, you are telling us, you know, you are still working on it. I want to give you my scenario. In Skyward Express, I have about 5 or 6 Dash-8s, and I also operate a Fokker 50. The Fokker 50 and the Dash-8, in terms of capacity, they all carry about 50 passengers. But however, the bulk of responsibility, or the concentration of the authority, is that the person has to have a Fokker 50 rating. But we are not seeing the majority of the fleet, the complexity of the fleet is with the majority of the fleet. So that's where the bulk of compliance lies. In terms of the other items that are also addressed in the requirements of an operator, we have DCPs and we have authorized instructors. These are particular people who have experience and qualification to assist the chief pilot to make certain decisions. So at every point, the chief pilot has enough technical capacity to manage the operations in terms of the training requirements. So that's my point on having a bit of flexibility by putting the word "or." When you use "or" in between, maybe a rating on the largest aircraft or the majority of the aircraft, that has more weight and gives flexibility for the operators. Then on my other issue is the issue for Regulation 35.7, the number of cabin crew members using during a successful aircraft evacuation. So let's look at what works for the industry. You know, we do demonstration. We do demonstration of flight. We do the the emergency evacuation demo for purposes of certification. However, for example, if I have a Fokker 50 and I manage to get an STC where I can do a combi aircraft, where I can change the aircraft at will, a quick change, maybe remove the hold and make it full passenger, or maybe I can put in the partition where I can carry 20, 30. You see, these are technological advances in the world. So if we restrict every time we have to come to KCA for just a configuration change, you know, it doesn't make sense, you know. And look at KQ. KQ the other day, you know, modified one of their 787s to carry cargo. So every time KQ needs to enjoy the flexibility of not coming to the operator every 2 minutes. And yes, if the authority has entrusted the AOCs with the managers and everyone to oversight compliance, and that's why we are here as managers to make sure that happens. So introduction of such regulations brings complications in oversight. You see, if tomorrow I have seating capacity of 30, why would I need 3 cabin crew and I have a combi aircraft? No, I need to come to the authority for doing that every time. So if it is not dictated by a KO, let's not introduce a lot of complications, you know. If it is not ICAO, it's not an ICAO requirement, give the operators flexibility to operate within the margins. And unless there's incidences or safety issues that come about, you know, there was an evacuation demo from an accident or an incident that was not done correctly, then that can be praised. But in terms of compliance, in terms of demonstration, then the AOC should demonstrate at that time of certification. But other than that, don't limit the AOC moving forward, you know. And of course, the authority has the right to come and ask, and you can see through the trainings and all of that. So those are my comments on that. And then on the whole of Regulation 35, there's nothing wrong with it. If ICAO has not told us to change, it is okay. Let's leave it the way it is. Let's not fix what is not broken. And if it is broken, let's do a root cause analysis. And if the root cause analysis says the regulation is not sufficient, then let's deal with that. So if we are going to change items based on industry practice, let's show data, statistics, so that we can all contribute. Then going to Regulation 57, the FDA, the Flight Data Analysis Program. You know, there's 20,000, and then when you go to Regulation 57.3, there's 27. Can we harmonize it to 27? Because it will bring a lot of complications. You know, the operating margins as operators is very low. When you introduce this opens a very complicated can of worms. So it will not work for us. For 27,000 should be the limit. Let the bigger aircrafts deal with the issues for FDM. Then when you go to Regulation 59.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah,
Go ahead.
Okay. When you go to Regulation, where is it? I can't see. I think I will rest there. If something else comes up, those were my biggest issues. If something else comes up, then I will raise it. But those are my biggest concerns.
Okay, thank you very much, Bwana Ali Omar. Our team that is on the ground has received the comments. I want to invite any other participants who might wish to give a presentation or raise any concerns or give their comments on the regulations as they are, to kindly indicate the same. Then you will be given an opportunity to have the floor. So any person who wishes to make a presentation can actually indicate so under the questions tab, and they will be given an opportunity to make a verbal presentation. Okay, I can see one. Standby will be giving you an opportunity to address the meeting. Kindly accept the participation link, and you will have the floor. There are also a number of questions that are coming in with regard to the leadership courses. This will be addressed shortly by my colleagues. Wan Abubakar, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dennis. I think this is an issue that we've raised a number of times, both in our stakeholders meeting and also yesterday, in regards to some changes that were proposed in the KCAS 2018, or rather not proposed, because I don't think that process allowed for stakeholders participation. What we ended up with was regulations that had not been given some time for discussion. And this is where the issue of qualifications came about, especially for the chief pilot, because one would ask what necessitated that change. ICAO does not give that restriction in terms of type or rating, but it is something that was adopted. It seems like we were trying to address certain elements from the GA operations. And I echo my colleagues Gad and Ali Omar on the issue of differentiating between the general aviation and the large aircraft operators. That dilemma will always be with us, will always be with the regulator when we try to formulate one solution fit all. That will never happen. It will always, favor one side, and bring about challenges with the other operators. And this is exactly what has happened with this issue of qualifications for chief pilot, like we've seen. Now, ICAO does not require type rating on a specific aircraft. ICAO basically says, some sort of experience, PIC, if it's a large aircraft operator, of course, an ATPL. What we ended up with in 2018 was a change of wording that was adopted from FAA, and we raised this with the KCA. FAA has 121 and Part 141, differentiating between medium operators and large aircraft operators. And FAA, if we're to borrow really from best industry practice like it has been put here, the industry practice for FAA, which was the most restrictive here, was type rating on one of the large aircrafts. Now, large aircrafts, we have a definition in regulations. Large aircraft is anything above medium. But when you go and twist the wording to suit certain agenda or subjective approach and make it largest, there's no definition of largest. As Ali Omar has said, between Dash 8 and Fokker 50, how do you apply largest? Is it largest in mass? Is it largest in volume? Is it largest in weight? Is it largest in speed? So we are the ones who end up introducing things and procedurally and end up with these challenges. And this is not a 2021 KCAS issue. This is a 2018. So my suggestion would be, if we're to operate, let's take into effect and consider all type of operations. It becomes very restrictive, not only restrictive, but also very costly. If every time you have to introduce an aircraft, you have to train the chief pilot on that type, or get somebody else altogether. So it does not serve any purpose. If you ask us, if the least we can have is one of the large, in case of a large aircraft operator, and if not, then even the managerial experience, what ICAO considers as managerial, the PIC is considered as a manager. So maybe PIC time can be considered when it comes to managerial for small aircraft operators, and left out maybe for the large aircraft operators to have some sort of managerial, because there is an opportunity for managerial experience in a large aircraft operator, maybe fleet management, maybe chief instructor, that might not necessarily be there for the small aircraft operators. So it might seem like a very small typo, large to largest, but it has serious consequences. And this is what I want us to reconsider. Largest does not exist in aviation terminology. Large does exist.
Okay. Thank you very much for the contribution. Our team will take that on board and review the same and incorporate it in the regulations. We've noted the ambiguity that might be brought about by making reference to largest as opposed to large aircraft. The same will be looked at and reviewed accordingly. I'll request one of my colleagues to come in and join and respond to some of the queries that have been raised, as well as the concerns touching on the various topics, including the chief pilot position.
Thank you, Dennis, for this opportunity. I'll go ahead and answer a few of the queries. Ali, we have noted the one for the demonstration flight and also for the emergency evacuation, and all that we will review and we'll consider your input while we are doing it. We'll come back to the industry before we take the regulations to Parliament. The one for 57 for the FDMS, that was a mistake, and yesterday we clarified that it's supposed to be 27,000 kilos and not 20,000. So that one was a mistake on the CA part, and it will be rectified. For the one for the chief pilot, I've had both you and Captain Abubakar from Kenya Airways, and it's something that we'll also review, and we'll get back to you, because from the comments we are reading, even Captain Gad had mentioned that as operators, we'll endeavor to comply with the CAO standards, but as the authority, we should try and give slack to operators. As the CAA, we are not out to stop anyone's business. If anything, we want to be able to help, because if we improve the aviation industry, we're improving Kenya as a whole. So when you look at it, we are not looking to destroy any operator. So that is why we are saying we're going to look into it, because I know Ali Omar, you said, why are we still reviewing for the chief pilot? The reason why we say we're reviewing is because of the comments that you had made earlier on. I hope that answers your questions for now. Thank you. Back to you, Dennis.
So thank you very much for the comment and response to what has been raised by our participants. We'd like to invite any additional participants who wish to make their comments. Kindly just indicate so under the questions button, and we will be able to give you the floor for purposes of making the presentation. I note that we have gotten into the lunch hour. That's from 1 o'clock. I will request that we keep our presentations straight to the point to enable us keep time for the next session that will be starting at 2 o'clock. So Bwana Gad Kamau, kindly accept the participation request and let us have your comments.
He pays. Okay, Mr. Chairman, how do you read?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. Kindly proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. Just one question that's being evaded in every presentation. It's to have a group of aircrafts designated as a single type. And a lot of authorities have designated aircraft below, at or below 12,500 pounds or 5.7 tons as a single type. So, and you have operators operating those aircraft, they're familiar with them, the systems are pretty close to each other. And it's been left to the operator for the purpose of testing and checking and proficiency and everything, to have a pilot who operates aircraft below 5.7 tons to do it on the largest. and it's assumed that he has covered the others. This is a practice elsewhere. Why we still insist on specific types of aircraft, 172s, 182s, 206s, that are so close in operation is nothing but costly for the operator, and it does not in any way enhance safety. The other one I wanted to bring up, and it's something that we have to pay attention to, and I think KCA needs to pay attention to this. Standards, we have to comply. That is, we have no option as operators, because Kenya has no intention, has never intended at any one time to file a difference. But when an authority has been given the mandate by ICAO to come up with, to set the motion for a certain area, kindly consult operators. And this issue of cabin crew and everything, what do operators normally do on this issue? What are they doing? What would they recommend? We need to move ahead without feeling constrained by cost effect. When you start thinking about money, when you're running a flight operation, that it's getting expensive, what happens to that flight operation, Mr. Chairman, is that the operator starts taking corners and cut costs. He cut costs in maintenance, he cuts costs elsewhere, just so that he can comply with regulatory requirements that are not, at the end of the day, enhancing safety. So kindly, I request you, kindly, the operators that are bringing those issues up, I know where they're coming from. It's a cost thing that it doesn't enhance their safety at all, and we need to revise that and listen to their plea. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Gad, for the input, and we have taken it on board in terms of ensuring that we have adequate consultation on matters that we can say are not specifically ICAO regulated. We will be coming back to the industry for purposes of getting input in terms of what the industry practice is at the moment. We have Mr. Kamlesh Tank, who wishes to make a few remarks. Kindly go ahead.
Sorry, good afternoon, Dennis. I don't want to take too much of anybody's time because everybody needs to go out for a break and have a quick bite to eat. It's just to clarify something on what ICAO has basically put in the new technical instructions. And this has been going on since 2017, where everybody has been given ample of time to align or to come into this new competence-based training and competence-based approach to dangerous goods training and assessment. And this has been put in the new technical instructions. And the new technical instructions that are running from 2021 to 2023 have also, there's also guidance material that has been given to the relevant authorities as to ensure that the operators align their training programs, etc., to the requirements as per what ICAO needs. Now, most of this has been there before. This was in doc, we call it the doc 9868, and this is the procedures for air navigation services. The only thing that was missing was dangerous goods, and which ICAO has put, has said, okay, enough is enough. We need to align everything, and it has to go into the air navigation's training program. So this is how ICAO has what is it, lined it up, and the reason for this is it gives now all the the job titles are gone. There is no, it's now job function. So are you competent enough to basically be, what is it, to safely handle dangerous goods and maintain all the safety standards as per the ICAO mandate? So, you know, all this, I know there's mention of IATA. IATA basically is a trade organization of airlines, right? They make their own standards, which also incorporates the ICAO technical instructions. But I believe the guidelines that the civil aviation's worldwide follow is the ICAO guidelines. of which, yes, the industry standard also contributes towards the requirements, but it has to be it has to balance between the regulator, example like the state, and also the operators. I've been noticing many operators have been talking a lot about that. We agree we've got the small scale operators to the large scale operators who operate the 2 to 5 Marias. So everybody has got different capabilities and capacities. Now in this case, we just like to, and my main concern is this is the I believe everybody has seen this, whoever is here. This is the new guidelines on competency-based training and assessment, and we've been given about 18 months whereby everybody has to comply to the standards. And what EKO is saying, there's a second edition that's on its way. We hope we'll get it by the end of the year of the same. So those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamlesh Tank, for the remarks that you provided. Our team has noted that and will be giving feedback on that. Let's have one more comment from Ms. Agnes Kamau for purposes of receiving input and comments from the industry on matters to do with the AOC and admin regulations. Ms. Agnes Kamau, kindly unmute and you have the floor now.
Thank you so much, Dennis, and thank you to KCA for this forum. It's much appreciated. I had put my comments on, I'd typed them, but I had to break them up because of the character limitations, so I just wanted to restate it. This is on Regulation 35 on the issue of cabin crew numbers. And my point is, the reason why we want to increase the cabin crew numbers is because operators are failing in their demonstration. And that, of course, is Kenyan AOC holders. But the same aircraft being operated by any other international operator registered in another jurisdiction, they are able to evacuate it with the numbers, because the numbers that we currently have are the same for FAA, for EASA, across the board. So if it's Kenyans who are unable to pass the demonstration, what is the underlying issue? It has to be more than just increasing the numbers. So my plea is that, of late we've seen the government making some decisions that are impacting local aviation. I hope this will not be one of them. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, Agnes, for your comments. The same have been received. I see we've eaten into the lunch hour. But just before we go, I'll request my colleague, Ms. Elizabeth Kameno, or Captain Mary Kai, to give some general remarks when it comes to over the matters that have been raised.
Okay, I'll address the issues addressed for dangerous goods, for qualifications on CBTA. So as discussed previously from the chat, the CA is in the process of incorporating the requirements. We will involve the industry so that we move together in effort to comply on the same. So Mr. Kamlesh will consult with you widely, and Winnie and Pauline on the same matters, and we will get back to you. Winnie had asked about the technical guidance material to the industry. That will also be issued to the industry. So Captain Mary Kai will address the other issues.
Thank you, Kamini and Dennis. For the other issues, I reiterate, we have heard everything that you have said. Captain Guard, we are actually looking at the grouping, because it's not just an issue with operators, but even us as regulators, it's proving to be a challenge. So in terms of even the DCP, for us to be able to give oversight, So as soon as we are able to come up with the groupings, we'll involve most of the operators, especially with Wilson, so that we can be able to come up with the best practice for our industry. In terms of when you said ICAO, that the industry is ready to comply, but we should just focus on ICAO more than looking at other CAs, especially one of us mentioned the FAA. We have had everything that you have said, and we will consider it just to be able to improve aviation as a whole. Thank you very much for your participation.
So thank you very much, Captain, for those remarks. Bwana Ali Omar, you have the floor.
I just want to add on the comment of the other lady talked about cabin crew. The cabin crew issue. We need to come out very clear that if an operator does not meet a requirement, it is not the industry which does not meet the requirement. The KCA should look at the root cause. Is it the training issue? But let's not impose things on the regulation based on issues with operators. If someone fails an interview, let's not make the law to govern. We make the law to work towards the best. So if someone wants to have flexibility on certain things, let's say the issue for chief pilot, we need to go towards competency based. Competency based is assessed. You're given an opportunity and you prove beyond reasonable doubt you're capable. I know people who have I'm an auditor. I know people who claim they have a lot of experience on certain matters, but if you go and you assess them based on a standard, they don't meet the mark. And Mr. Gad said the other day, we need to move towards competency based. Does ICAO meet the requirement? Yes or no? If KCA wants to approve a chief pilot, let them interview the chief pilot. Let them, you might get a guy who is new in the field, but is way ahead, and the pilots in this forum will tell you, you'll get a pilot who's flown for 10 years, but the guy cannot handle an emergency, and he's never made it to the captain's seat, and it's all based on competency. And you'll get a guy who will fly 500 hours, and the guy can manage themselves. So we need to move towards competency-based, compliance, where the regulator does not, mask things because operators are not performing. If an operator is not performing, put them to task on individual grounds, but not, tell the whole industry that we are introducing a regulation because of this. No, we need to look at the root cause. Maybe the trainers you've approved are not up to standard. The same trainers that KCA, came and observed and approved they can train. Maybe they are not up to standard. So they need to ask. Maybe the people who are being recruited are not sharp enough. So I think we leave it at that. Thank you, KCA, for giving me an opportunity.
Thank you very much for the comments that we've received. Just before we break for lunch, I'll be requesting my colleague, Ms. Mary Keter, to give some remarks.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. I think it can be heard loud and clear. We want to acknowledge receipt of some recommendations made by Kenya Airways. This is by Evans Kihara on AOC and Administration Regulation number 14. This is on the requirements for head of maintenance. We have taken into account what you have recommended that KCA considers to amend and add onto this regulation, where the requirement for a degree or a diploma in aeronautical engineering or AML holder with appropriate rating on airframe, power plant, and avionics, as opposed to just requiring an engineer's license, Another recommendation on this is from Major Retired Solomon Nyanjui from Muhai Aviation. Again, Nyanjui is concerned that why have a licensed engineer with no responsibility on payroll? He has no authority to work on the aircraft as the aircraft is on maintenance contract approved by the authority to a given AMO. Thank you, Major Retired Solomon Nyanjui. We have taken your recommendation on board. And then we have one last one from Captain Kai Tinga, again on regulation number 14, head of maintenance, that you recommend that we relook at this head of maintenance requirement. Comment, it is expensive and unattainable for small AOC to employ a licensed engineer with appropriate airframe, power plant or avionics ratings on a full-time basis. All these recommendations, we take them on board, and you realize that the three recommendations have varying requests, which KCA will look at individually, and looking at putting into considerations the AOC requirements in the regulation number 61, where an operator is responsible fully for the maintenance of its aircraft as per the approved maintenance program. So we will look at these three inputs among others that we might be receiving online. We will update you on the final outcome on this one. And I believe we will all come to an agreement. And then the other comment that was given by Gad Kamau online was concerning the COV, now the operation status under general aviation, where Gad wanted to know that if an aircraft is carrying out ferry flights or a special assignment like a test flight, does this make it general aviation? In the regulation, it doesn't make it general aviation. It still remains commercial if it was a commercial aircraft, because this is just a temporary activity that the aircraft is undertaking to maintain its operations and its airworthiness status. Thank you very much. I hand it over to Dennis. Thank you, Dennis.
Okay. Thank you very much, Perry, for the comments and the clarifications that have been received. As you can see, we are taking on board the comments and input that are being provided or that are being received up to now. We confirm that we have not closed the window for submission of any comments on any of the regulations that have already been presented or any of the regulations that are still to be presented. We are still receiving the same. You can present them here on the live platform, on the platform that we are currently using. You can either give them orally or have them typed under the Ask a New Question bar. We are also still receiving the same under the dedicated email, KCARS 2021 at kcaa.or.ke. We will receive the comments and the same will be collated and be presented, posted on the website for purposes of showing the comments that have been taken on board. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll kindly request that we now take a break for purposes of lunch. In the afternoon, when we come in, Captain Motai will be taking us through the draft civil aviation helicopter operations regulations. We've received quite some input on this, and the same will be addressed in the course of presentation. Thereafter, we will have the draft civil aviation licensing of air services regulations. We anticipate your full participation on this, as it's the economic regulatory regulations that we have. Just before we break, I want to take you through the process. Just before we break, I want to take you through the process of joining the links that will be there in the afternoon. We will kindly go to the KCAA website. On the homepage, there is a join the sessions link. Kindly click on the drop-down menu and thereafter choose the session that you want or you wish to participate in. In the afternoon, as I said again, we are having the helicopter operations regulations. Thereafter, the licensing of air services regulations. We look forward to your participation during the We look forward to your participation during the afternoon session, and noting that we have gone well into the lunch hour, we'll kindly be requesting that we commence the session from 2:30 p.m. and that's for the helicopter regulations to give us ample time to refresh and replenish for the afternoon session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and see you back at 2:30. Kindly remember the process of joining the afternoon sessions. Thank you very much, and enjoy your lunch. Thank you.